Welcome to the Minnesota Regional Prevention Coalition video series. This series is brought to you by the Minnesota Regional Prevention Coordinators and the Minnesota Department of Human Services Alcohol and Drug Division. My name is Dr. Bill Geary, and this video series is hosted by Global Evaluation Solutions. This series is designed to help Minnesota prevention coalitions improve their understanding of evaluation. So, let's get started. This video begins by clarifying the meaning of the term indicator. I will then describe a two-part process for identifying meaningful indicators and give some examples. This is followed by describing some conversation starters to engage your evaluator, and finally, I will offer a summary and next steps. Before I talk about the process, it's important to understand what an indicator is. As the name implies, it indicates some concept or idea. More specifically for our purposes, an indicator is a measurable piece of information or data that answers some aspect of an evaluation question. We cover how to develop useful evaluation questions in another video, so let's just take an example here. One of our evaluation questions is, to what extent has alcohol use by youth changed over the past year? Of course, we need some way of measuring the concept of alcohol use by youth. In this case, we can use youth who report 30-day use of alcohol as a way of measuring alcohol use by youth. However, it's important to remember that there are multiple ways of measuring alcohol use by youth. Another indicator might be number of youth who are arrested for underage drinking. I will use these indicators as examples throughout this video and demonstrate how you can figure out if either of these are meaningful indicators for your initiative. To help you decide if an indicator is right for your initiative, it's helpful to think about two broad characteristics for any indicator. The first is validity, which refers to how well an indicator describes an idea or concept. The second I will refer to as logistics, which refers to how the indicator data will be collected and used. So let's start with validity. You've probably heard of validity before. For our purposes, validity refers to four traits. The first is specificity, which means, does the indicator clearly describe what we want to measure? The second, observable, focuses our attention on the action or change that is important to us. The third, measurable, asks us to consider if we can observe or count the action or change. And finally, reliability asks us to consider if we can accurately collect the data over a period of time. So, let's take our two examples and see if they qualify. Indicator 1 is number of youth who report 30-day use of alcohol. And indicator 2 is number of youth who are arrested for underage drinking. Both of these indicators describe underage drinking. For indicator 1, we're measuring youth who report their own behavior, and for indicator 2, we're measuring police activity caused by underage drinking. They both also focus on an action. Youth who report 30-day use focuses on the reporting practices of youth, while indicator 2 focuses on police arrest activity. Decreases in either of these indicators might indicate decreases in underage drinking. And finally, they are both pretty easy to count. It will be easy to compare youth reporting and arrests from one year to another. Typically, the survey question that provides data for the first will remain the same over many years, and we can rely on police to continue to record arrest data. So while we could use either of these to measure underage drinking, it's clear that they each have their own strengths and limitations as indicators. Some limitations for self-reported 30-day use data include unanswered questions about how was the alcohol consumed? What was the setting? What amount of alcohol was consumed? Was it a half glass of wine at a family celebration or 6 shots at a youth party? And what were the consequences of use? Did the youth get in trouble from parents, or maybe they were arrested? However, arrests also have some limitations. For example, what percentage of underage drinking does not result in getting caught and or being arrested? And what were the circumstances that led to the arrests? These limitations are important to understand the context of the behavior so we can better understand the negative consequences to youth and the community. One final point here. The most common pushback against self-report data is the belief that youth will lie on the survey. It is important to understand the validity of the survey you are using in order to address this concern. Lying on school-based behavioral surveys does occur, but at very low rates, and can be kept to a minimum with proper implementation and analysis. So let's address the logistical characteristics of indicators. There are 6 further logistical elements that we can apply to our potential indicators that will help tell us if they are right for our initiative. Tradition addresses if we have a history of using that indicator. Data availability assesses whether or not we have access to the data right now and addresses our expectation of availability in the future. This is an important question for community prevention since certain initiatives may take years of development. Data burdens suggest that we consider the difficulty of collecting the data. Data quality suggests that data may or may not meet stakeholder expectations. Stakeholder support is augmented if the indicator is viewed as accurately measuring a behavior and has irrelevant limitations. The question of investment asks us to think about the resources available to collect, analyze, and interpret the data. And finally, data use involves who will actually use the data and how will that data help them. When we combine both validity and logistics, we can flesh out some important benefits and challenges to using certain indicators. Some benefits of using self-report school survey data include most school surveys are validated and consistent, and this type of data usually meets stakeholder expectations on measuring the behavior. There's also a high likelihood that the data will be collected over a long period of time. Some challenges might include wanting to use self-report data but not having access to a validated school-based survey and the problems of validity and reliability that creates. If you're using a standardized survey, the question is who will pay for it, since they can be expensive. For our second example, some benefits include police collect arrest data as a part of their normal duties. We're not asking them to do anything extra. Again, arrest data is a common indicator for the behavior and is recognized by most stakeholders, and arrest data is typically very easy to track over time. Some challenges are, we know that not all or even most underage drinking results in an arrest, and even if a youth is caught by police, that does not mean that they will be arrested. This data can also be significantly impacted by changes in police norms around arrest. 2 final points about indicators are relevant here. First, no single data point is perfect as an indicator. Every indicator has strengths and challenges. The conversations about using indicators should focus on why you may or may not want to collect certain kinds of data, and what are the limitations of any data you decide to collect. Second, indicators for community projects do not stand alone. It's important to think about data as working together to provide a comprehensive picture of community behaviors and coalition efforts. To help you discuss this issue with your coalition evaluator, I have developed some conversation starter questions to ask them. First, ask them, what indicators have you used for initiatives like ours? What have been some of the strengths and weaknesses of using those indicators? Next, ask them, given what you know about our coalition, how many indicators would you suggest we use this year? You should also ask them, what kinds of indicators are used in the research on the kind of issues and activities we will be or are engaged in? You will also want to start clarifying their role in the process by asking, what role do you expect to play in collecting, managing, analyzing, and presenting these indicators? Again, it's important to remember that not all new data collection has to occur by the evaluator. There are ways to include partners if there are extra indicators you would like to collect. And if you're interested in developing your coalition skills, you could ask them, how can you work with us so we can build our skills in developing and using indicators? And finally, you should ask, can you work with stakeholders and show them potential uses of these indicators so that they can stay involved? Some important next steps might include forming a work group that can take the lead and providing them with the information presented in this video. It's also important that you reach out to your evaluator and that the evaluator helps take a leading role in this part of the evaluation process. You also want to reach out to your local RPC who can provide you with important information and templates to help you move forward. Another important step is to think about how the coalition will identify and reach out to stakeholders. I hope this has helped you think more deeply about selecting indicators. In this video, we clarified the meaning of the term indicator. I then described some important characteristics you can use to select indicators and walk through some examples. This was followed by some conversation starters to engage your evaluator, and finally, I offered some next steps you can use to help your coalition select meaningful indicators. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions about this video or any other coalition issue, please feel free to contact us. I know that coalition work can be very challenging, but please remember the words of the Eagles who sang, "Take it easy, don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy." Be well, everybody.